I'm Kaylee, and today we're going to be looking at my 2022 reading stats and whether or not I met my 2022 reading goals. So did I meet my reading goals in 2022? Yes and no. Some of them I did really great. I even surpassed my goal, and others of them I did about like half of my goal. And some things just didn't work out this past year. Before we dive into all my reading stats, I'm gonna reach back here to our Booktuber Shoutout book, and we're gonna shout out somebody randomly. Today's shout out goes to the Artisan Geek. I will leave a link to their channel over in the description, so be sure to click over there and subscribe to them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up, and follow me over on Goodreads and Storygraph and Instagram and Twitter and just all the places. So the biggest main goal that I had in 2022 was I wanted to read a certain amount of pages. Instead of setting a goal to read a certain amount of books, I set a goal to read a certain amount of pages, hoping that this would allow me to read longer books, to make more of a commitment to read larger books and not feel like, oh no, I'm not reading enough books to meet my goal. But with longer books, it doesn't matter, because it's longer pages. So I decided to go with the goal to read 100 pages per day for 365 days in the year. That's 36,500 pages. I arrived at that number because I averaged out the total number of pages that I've read in the last 10 years, and it averages out to about 46,000 pages a year. So setting a goal for 100 pages a day really wasn't that far outside of, actually it was less than what I have been averaging for the last few years. So this is where it gets a little interesting with the statistics. If you include all the books that I read together, I read 357 books this year. All the total pages together is 40,327 pages. So I definitely met that goal with no problem. However, I really have two sets of statistics. One with just regular books, which regular books I read 158 books. And I read 199 children's picture books. So that definitely skews my statistics with all of those picture books in there. At the end of the year, on December 31st, I was kind of like, man, 199 picture books? You couldn't have just read one more picture book and make it an even 200. But I didn't, so whatever. You think little picture books are only 20 or 30 pages, but man, when you read 200 of them, those pages really add up. So if you count up my total pages for the year without the picture books, it comes out a little bit short of my goal. So if you count with the picture books, I met my page goal. If you count without the picture books, I did not meet my page goal. So, I don't know what to make of that. Numbers, I don't know. So the whole deal with the page goal was that I wanted to read longer books. So did I actually read longer books? Not including the picture books, because the picture books just skew the numbers in a whole nother direction. Not including picture books, 77% of the books that I read were under 300 pages. So that's 121 books that were under 300 pages long. 20% of the books that I read, that's 31 books, were between 300 and 500 pages. And only 3% of the books that I read, that's only 5 books that I read, were over 500 pages. So I didn't really end up reading longer books. Sometimes with longer books, it's just such a time commitment, and so then you might hesitate to pick up a longer book because it's like, oh boy, here's this big one and this is a big commitment. So I don't know. Okay, so another one of my goals was to read your own books. Stop accepting so many review copies from publishers and read your own stinking books. So let's see the results. Did I read my own books? Again, the picture books skew the statistics in a certain direction. Of my own books, I read 70 of my own books that I already owned, that were already on my bookshelves. I read 287 review copies. That's including the 199 picture books. With the picture books included, 81% of my reading was review copies, and only 19% was my own actual books. That is awful. That percentage just really stinks. However, if you don't include the picture books, then it evens out a little bit more. So I read 88 books that were review copies that were not children's picture books, that were just regular books, right? And 70 of my own books. So that puts it at 44% were my own books and 56% were review copies, if you don't count the picture books. So that's a little more even. That makes me feel a little bit better. So about half and half of my own books and review copies, still more review copies. But then if you count the picture books, then it's like insane. Lots of picture books. One of my goals that I do every year is that I want to read 12 classics. I try to do one every month, but a lot of times, like in Jane Austen July or Victober, I end up reading more classics in those months as well. Most years I read more than 12 classics, but that's my goal, is 12. So in 2022, I actually read 13 classics the way I term classics that were written before 1914. And I read 27 modern classics that were written, say, between 1914 and like the 1970s-ish. 13 that I actually term as classics were The Mayor of Casterbridge, The Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott, Olive by Diana Maria Craik, Round the Fire Stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, The Portable Kipling, which I finally finished, Lady Susan by Jane Austen, Lover's Vows, the play by Elizabeth Inchbald, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, Children of the New Forest by Frederick Marryat, Much Ado About Nothing by Shakespeare, which is my favorite Shakespearean play, and I always love rereading it, and also A Midsummer Night's Dream manga classic and Sense and Sensibility manga classic. So I don't really know if you count that as a classic because the story itself is classic, but then it's been adapted in a more modern way. So I don't really know where to shelve that or where to put that. And I also read Hansbrinker or The Silver Skates. So I really, really enjoyed the classics that I read in 2022. The 27 modern classics were The Chronicles of Narnia, the entire series, Kilmeny of the Orchard by Lucy Maud Montgomery, Aunt Crete's Emancipation, The Girl from Montana, and The Story of a Whim by Grace Livingston Hill, The Man Born to be King by Dorothy Sayers, The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer, Knowing God by J.I. Packer. That was published in 1973, so I'm like, I'll count it. First two books of the famous 5 series by Enid Blyton, 5 on a Treasure Island and 5 Go Adventuring Again. The Naughtiest Girl Again, also by Enid Blyton. Aunt Jane's Nieces in the Red Cross, Aunt Jane's Nieces Out West, and Aunt Jane's Nieces on the Ranch. The Little Book Room, The BFG, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach, all by Roald Dahl. And I reread some of my favorite childhood classics, That Boy Johnny, Through the Green Gate, and Down the River Road, which are both Alice and Jerry books. So that was quite a lot of classics and modern classics, and I enjoyed so many of these a lot. I'm going to be talking about those some more in another video coming up, where I'm going to try to rank all of the classics that I read in 2022. So another one of my goals was I wanted to reread Lord of the Rings and reread Narnia. So I did reread all of Narnia, but I did not reread Lord of the Rings. So I'm making it my goal to read that in January. In the next couple of weeks, I am going to try to read Lord of the Rings because, like, man, I just need to get on top of this goal. Another goal I had was I had 4 series that I wanted to finish, and I actually only finished 2 of them. So I finished reading the Dragon and Thief series. It's actually the Dragonback series. It's what it's called. The first book is Dragon and Thief by Timothy Zahn. So I finished all 6 of that series and really enjoyed it. Like, wow, that was such a cool series. And I finished reading the Aunt Jane's Nieces series by Frank L. Baum, or L. Frank Baum, or however, I forget. But I did not finish the Redwall series. That's going to be one of my goals for this year. And I did not finish the 39 Steps Richard Hannay series by John Buchan. So that's going to be another goal for this year. So I did half of my series goal. So not too shabby considering just all the other reading that I was doing. Another goal that I had was to read more books in Spanish. I wanted to read the entire Little Women series in Spanish, and I only read the first half of Little Women, not the second half, Good Wives. I'm in the middle of reading Good Wives right now. And of course, I still need to read Jo's Boys and Little Men. And I did not do well at all on my Spanish reading goal. That needs to be something that I really pick up this year. So those are all of my stats and how I did on my reading goals this past year. Please leave me a comment and let me know, how did you do on your reading goals this past year? Or did those reading goals just kind of go out the window and you're like, just gonna read whatever strikes me in the moment, and I'm not gonna worry about goals, and I don't care about page count or any of that, or Goodreads challenge, who cares? I'm just gonna do whatever. So how was your reading? Was it goal-oriented or just whatever reading? And be on the lookout soonish, hopefully in the next few days, for my 2023 reading goals. So what are my goals going to be for this coming year? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.